Welcome everyone to the Cobb Institute webinar series in partnership with blackdoctor.org and the Equitable Breakthroughs in Medicine Development, also known as EQB Med initiative. EQB Med is a collaborative effort working to increase participation from communities of color and rural communities in clinical trials and medical research. The Cobb Institute has partnered with EQB Med with the goal of inspiring the next generation of clinical researchers to increase diversity within the field. We appreciate each of you taking time to join us this evening. I'm excited to introduce our three panelists for the discussion tonight. Tonight, we'll focus on participant experiences in clinical trials and highlight some of the work EQB Med is doing to advance clinical trial diversity. And as they join us, I have Reverend Dr. Perry, Reverend Dr. Cross, and Carmel, and I'd love to start with each of you sharing a brief introduction. Reverend Dr. Perry?
Yes. I am a cultural ambassador at Yale YCCI. I'm a pastor, St. Stephen's AME Zion Church. I've been doing work with recruitment, empowerment, with underserved and marginalized communities for the last 15 years. And I'm now working with the Yale School of Medicine to further the EQB Med project.
Thank you. Thank you. And Reverend Dr. Cross?
I am a retired hospital chaplain to the Department of Veterans Affairs, having worked in South Carolina and also Washington, D.C. And my experience with EQB Med was this summer when we went to South Carolina. I'm excited about what it's all about and trying to promote more diversity among people of color. And it's good to be a part of the evening today.
Thank you for joining us. And to Carmel. Okay. We'll come back for that introduction. So let's jump right into participant experiences in clinical trials. As we start our conversation talking about participation experiences in clinical trials, what does it look like to be a participant in a clinical trial? What are frequent barriers faced, and how can local communities and healthcare sites address this? Reverend Dr. Cross, you have a unique perspective as both a prostate cancer survivor and a participant in a clinical trial. What motivated you to take part in the trial, and how did you overcome any hesitations or concerns?
Boy, that's a great question, isn't it? And I love the way you expanded it out. Let me say the motivation was the fact that my PSA kept going up and it kept going up and up like that. And of course, we were trying to find something to, I guess, some kind of lifeline. And it is interesting, though, Dr. Stevens, because I find that it is important to have a provider who's willing to work with you and share the fact that there are clinical trials out there. I had been on, if I talk too long, pull me back. I had been on probably 2 or 3 of them, and sometimes they were working, and then at some point maybe they stopped working. And then in that case, I won't say I became depressed, but I'm saying, my Lord, this thing is not working, and I'm going to get sicker and sicker, and I'm going to die. And fortunately, I had a provider, some providers who talked among themselves and were able to try a different clinical trial. So I've been on a couple of them, maybe 3, a couple of them, and fortunately, the last one that I was on worked, and I think it worked so well. It was a double-blind study, And let me know if I'm talking too long. Is this the kind of stuff you want?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. It worked so well that after a while, they no longer called it, I guess, a clinical trial. It became something that they began to use with everyone because ethically, if you find that it's working and it's going to do good for the community, you cannot keep using let folk go on with the clinical trial if you think you have something that will help folk.
Mm-hmm.
So fortunately, again, I had a doctor who said to me, "Let's try this." And that was tried, and I didn't know if I would get the placebo or the real thing. I later on found out I was actually getting the real thing, but the actual medicine. But that in and of itself was a real trial, if I can say that, because there's certain things I could do and could not do. I had a grandson. Thank God, I have a grandbaby, and I love her to death. Certain days after the meds, you can't have the baby on your lap and all these kinds of things because of the drugs that they put in your body. And also, I need to share this. The When I read, I don't know if I should wait for your other questions or not, but when I read all of what was involved, the possible side effects and all like that, I got to one point of saying, and hope I'm not contradicting myself, saying, I don't know if I want to do this, because they go through. Obviously, these are the days of informed consent. We're no longer at Tuskegee and Henrietta Lacks and that kind of thing. So, in informed consent, they have to let you know what's going on. And when I read all that was going on, or that could possibly happen to my body by using the drug that was in the clinical trial, Lord knows I got to be frank. I said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And one day I was on Wisconsin Avenue on Highway, Washington, D.C., come from the hospital. I said, I'm not going to do this because I don't want to deal with the side effects. I do not want to go through this. They go through all the possible side effects. This can happen. This can happen. This can happen. I said, I don't want to do that. And of course, the alternative is to let the council progress. And what was interesting in my case was I called a friend who also was dealing with the same disease that I'm dealing with, but treated differently, and sort of challenged me. Reverend Perry almost is in that Nehemiah story, Naaman story in the Bible, where it says, you don't want to do, they ask you to do something simple and you don't want to do it, but if that's something too hard, you would do it. I just at one point didn't want to do it, and then my friend talked me through it. So you need to go on through this if this can save your life. And that was several years ago. So I'm glad. I'm
Thank
still
you.
here. I shot basketball this morning, right? So I'm all right.
Oh, we are so glad as well, and thank you for sharing that insight and your experience. Carmel, we'll go to you. Please just share with us a brief introduction, and then I have a question for you as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I apologize, the storm has hit and caused a little bit of technical difficulties. But my name is Carmeli Bauchi. I'm a clinical research manager at Morehouse School of Medicine. It's one of the mentor hubs for Equitable Med. I've been working in clinical research for about 8 years now. I currently manage a few clinical research studies. These include vaccine trials, COVID trials, also in regards to oncology as well. Um, it is a lot of patient facing. I'm in the rooms with them. I know Dr. Reverend Cross mentioned like the informed consent. You do a lot of the consenting of our patients, making sure that they're as comfortable as possible. And we can delve more into it later. But yeah, that's a little about my background, and I'm working in clinical research with EQB Med and Morehouse as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. So, in your experience as a clinical research manager at Morehouse School of Medicine, what are some of the most common barriers you see participants face in clinical trials?
Yeah, a lot of it is wariness, just they're just not very informed in regards to clinical research. A lot of them are concerned with what exactly is happening. What are they going to be doing with my samples that are collected. Their blood, their specimens, nasal, saliva, everything's collected, and they're not sure what's going to happen with it. And a lot of it is just wariness, being confused in regards to what needs to be done, and just feeling as if their information can be, used inappropriately. I always want to make sure that I'm providing as much information as possible when I'm talking to them, giving them as much time as possible just to have them ask questions, get informed as much as they can. I want them to leave that room as with all their worries kind of dissipated as much as possible. I know it's a very hard asking a lot from these participants, so a lot of times it's all about just them being comfortable and them not feeling as if we're taking from them and not really giving as well. So that's a really big barrier I've noticed is awareness.
Okay, and then so how can clinical research institutions better support participants from underserved communities?
Honestly, engagement. Engagement's a huge part of it, just recruitment as well. Here at Morehouse, we do have many different aspects that we use to help our participants get more involved and feel more comfortable. For example, transportation is a big barrier, a big issue with getting them to our visits and being able to actually participate. So we've tried to create, Lyft and Uber transportation for free for them to be able to get to their appointments and back. Also, just being in the community, we've had many events where we'll just, come by, pass out flyers in regards to what we have in regards to clinical research, let them ask many questions they like. And it's not about getting them to sign up, it's about getting them informed. Getting informed is really important. You're not wanting to take from them, you just want to be able to, let them know a little bit more about research as a whole and just what it includes. Ask many questions as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. And Reverend Dr. Perry, you have experience working within faith communities. How does faith intersect with health education and participation in medical research?
Thank you for that wonderful question. If I had the real answer, I would have won the lotto. Let me simply say that I think we all are in the area of trying to understand this. And all of us have come to the point where we realize that fear and faith are two integral parts of our either demise or our success. And when I say fear, there is that historical fear that Brother Reverend Cross mentioned earlier, through all of the clinical trials, the sterilizations, the medical apartheids in America, almost mirroring what went on in Nazi Germany. That's where they learned it from. They got it from us. And that's a fear. And then there's the fear that comes from ignorance, not really knowing what the real issues are and afraid to ask the questions, or living in poverty where those answers never get to you because you're so busy trying to make a living and to support your family in these zip codes, which is our new way of looking at disparity. Folk just don't have the time or the energy. So what we've been trying to do is to find ways in which we could engage that community to arrest those fears, to challenge and to empower people by saying, listen, if Black men die 2 times to their counterparts because of prostate cancer, women 4 times with breast cancer, with mental health issues off the chain in our communities, how, if they don't know that this is the reality and the statistics, then they're going to remain in ignorance, and the fear and the ignorance will keep us from bringing them into the light. So faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And so what we're trying to say to them is, listen, brother, they've got new treatments out here. They've got sisters, they've got things that you need to, that new ways of looking at breast cancer, ways that can save your life. Because the biggest fear is this, it is not the ignorance that keeps us. I think, and I don't think that we're so averse to being cured. It's just getting us there to the table. And I think that's what EQB Med is trying to do, is to get us to the table so that we can look at these disparities and say, yes, help me. Yes, there's something that can help me. And I think that's phenomenal now. And I think COVID has brought that to a reality for all of us. I had a young man in my fatherhood program who had said to me, "Doc, don't take the vaccine, because the vaccine, wait till everybody else take it and see what happens to them." And so I knew Dr. Oniyema, and he was doing the study at Yale. So I went and took the test. But I said to my brother, I said, listen, if I waited to find out whether it worked or not, I might not be around to tell you the results. So you got the faith is just not a word that's pie in the sky. It is an action word. And I think the faith community is the arms and legs, the foot soldiers that brings this message to our community.
Absolutely. Thank you. Reverend Dr. Cross, as someone who has experienced both the healthcare system and clinical trials, what advice would you give to individuals who are considering participating in a trial but may hesitate due to that mistrust that Reverend Dr. Perry spoke of?
It does begin, I believe, with trusting your healthcare providers. I have a healthcare provider that I really think so much of, and also I mentioned that obviously I've worked in healthcare for 30 some years in South Carolina, Washington, D.C., RRBs and all like that. So, I bring a little bit different perspective, but I think it takes a joint effort. The provider, in my case, the providers have to be willing and wanting to offer the opportunity to participate in clinical trials. And I don't know, and I'm not going to jump and say that there's racial discrimination going on there. However, I've been around long enough to know that I'm sure it may well be. Matter of fact, I ask the question sometimes. I see you smiling. I ask the question, and I ask it of my doctor now. I said, "How many black folk are in this trial?" When I was going through the trial, and weren't that many, weren't that many. I'm sorry. Was that the question you're asking me? Because I did ask the question. I said, "How many black folk went through this?" So it does mean that the providers have to, I think, offer it when they're comfortable enough with their patients, and the patient, because and patients trust, pretty much, I think, trust their doctors. A lot of them, I think they develop this relationship, as you know, over the years, and they can be real close. So when that relationship is there, I think there's a window and room there to say, well, if this is not working, then are you willing to try this? In spite of all the things that I said earlier, when they give you that booklet with all those possible things that can happen, I told you I went home and read that and said, look, I don't need to be going through this. And here I am, I have 4 college degrees, I said, I don't need to be going through this stuff. But a friend said, man, yes, you do, and I probably would have anyway, but I may not have, I don't know. Did I get off base? Was that your question?
That was, thank you, Reverend Dr. Cross. And I will go to Carmel. As someone who works so closely with patients, what have you seen that works in helping them to overcome mistrust and go into a clinical trial?
Yeah, I noticed just listening. Listening really helps a lot. Just learning what the problem is, what their qualms are, what they're concerned about, just listening and seeing from their perspective really helps a lot. And then going from there, just answering those questions, being able to provide them as much as you can. If maybe you can't provide it right there, be able to say, hey, I can, send you follow-up information through email. I can provide you this information. And giving them time. It's not a rush. It's not a thing where you have to do it right now. I want them to be comfortable before they sign anything. So I always tell them, hey, if you're not comfortable now, just give it a couple days, go home, talk to who you need to talk to your provider, talk to your family members, talk to anyone, or talk to me as well. Just reach out, let me know what you need. I can provide as much information as I can. And then from there, I hope to just give them that, give them that time to feel comfortable enough to say, like, okay, I'm ready. Like, this makes sense to me. Answer all my questions. I feel comfortable. I think I would love to be part of this study or this trial or learn more, things like that. So that's definitely one of the things, just make them feel comfortable and give them time to, ask as many questions as they can.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'd love to dive a bit deeper into overcoming barriers to participation in clinical trials and building trust. Reverend Dr. Perry, you're a cultural ambassador and a trusted messenger for the EQB Med initiative. Can you share a bit more about what EQB Med is and what these roles entail?
Well, the EQB Med is a collaborative community-based partnership to address disparity in clinical trials. And, they partnered with some incredible schools of medicine, like Morehouse and Yale and TSU, just to name a few, RCI. And they are looking at 10 different sites to go into where they can do some form of training and community collaboration with researchers and medical schools to somehow bridge that gap. Now, I just want to say this to answer part of the question that was asked previously, because I think that is significant in this discussion. The overall distrust, you ask, how do we break that into the community? So with our YCCI program, when we working under Tisha Johnson Harris, we came to discover some things. That number one, what Brother Cross said, and the reason he's on this show is because he's telling his story. And there's nothing like telling your story. If you want to get people, then you got to get people who know people who will tell their story. You don't have to be, there are people who are not in church that we know that tell their story. And when people hear their story or their success story, it helps other people. So that's one of the things that we work toward doing, is telling a story. So we have people in our organization that will come on our radio station and tell their story, how they survived colon cancer, what did they do with heart disease, and what were some of their fears and traumas. And then looking at that and telling their story, people are somehow more comforted and find more strength. And the second thing is we built on the foundation of saying this to them: we are family. So whatever happens to one member of your family, every member is affected. Not only just your immediate family, but your community. And so that is important. And the second thing that we try to suggest to them is that nobody can take charge of your health but you. I'm not trying to quote Booker T. Washington, throwing your bread on the water. I'm just saying that, every tub has its own bottom. You've got to advocate for yourself. You've got to take charge of your health. One of the things that we did when one of the researchers came to us about prostate cancer, they asked us, let's go to the barbershops. And we said, oh, interesting. Now, the barbershops are really not trusted messengers. That's where I get my hair cut. That's where I hear stories that go on in the community and overhear gossip and just, diatribe. But one of the things we said to this researcher was, that's a great idea, but how about us going to the beauty shops? Why not go after the women, go after the mothers, the daughters, the sisters, the brothers, and say, hey, did your husband, your brother, your uncle get their PSA? Are they going getting their regular checkups? And pushing that onto them so that we could, as a family, take charge of what is before us as a people in terms of almost annihilation because of our absence in these particular studies. I could go on forever because I'm a preacher, so I'm just going to slow down.
Well, please share it. No, Reverend Dr. Cross or Kamal, do you have anything you'd like to add to Dr. Perry's?
I think he said a lot important things. One of the things that I think is important in the Black community, a lot of our churches, have health fairs. I know the church where I attend, they're always having health fairs. They had one a few weeks ago. As the summer ended, we're giving backpacks for children and invite the community out and all like that. So there are a lot of opportunities to I hope I'm answering a question that was asked. I hope I'm not just saying stuff.
No, it's perfect. Yes.
Are you sure? Okay. So, all in trying to help people overcome whatever reservations they have about participating in healthcare. It's just an ongoing thing. And the church, I think, and ministers pretty much get it. A lot of times the idea is to get it out to other folk. I was thinking as I got rid of this conference about a friend of mine, I was thinking we were in college together, who's having some health issues, and I'm trying to get him to go to take care of his health issue and all like that, which is very important that it needs to get done. And he told me the day before yesterday, man, I went out in the yard, I was raking leaves, so I have the worst looking yard on the block. And I'm thinking, you raking leaves and you worried about your yard when your health is declined. It doesn't make sense. So I saw he's in another city, so I went to, you need to do this. So it's a matter of people who I guess have knowledge or whatever, taking the initiative, as Reverend Perry is saying, when you go to the beauty parlor or whatever, to get folk to reach out, because it's possible, but a lot of mistrust, unfortunately, is in our community. Too much mistrust, and some of it for reasons that we know.
Can I say this? I think, Brother Cross, you hit on something very important when you said the Black church. You see, people always talk about meeting people where you are. We are where the people are. That's where the Black church is. And the elephant in the room has been racism. And the Black church has somehow broken the back of Jim Crow, segregation, and racism. And, so it is the most powerful force that we have. Where can you find 200, 400, 2,000, 4,000 people every week that you can have this message and this dialogue with? So, one of the things that we did when you mentioned the health fair, in some health fairs, we have book bags and stuff, and those are great. But what we're trying to work at now, and one of the things we probably will be trying at the EQB Med, is having researchers come to these health fairs so that people can see them, talk to them, dialogue with them. It's one thing to talk about somebody you don't know in the blind. How you gonna trust somebody you can't see? That you don't get a chance to dialogue with. So our thing is, come to the church, come to the community, come to our health fairs. And this is what real collaboration is about. It's not about us going to you or to them, but it's about a collaboration where we meet together. And that's what this is when we talk about, meeting people where they are. That means you getting off your high horse and meeting us wherever we are. And meeting us at a level where you're not looking down at us as subjects, but you're looking at us as like you'd be looking at Michelle Obama.
Indeed. Yes, I think all of you have touched on some very, significant and integral points when it comes to strategies that are effective in outreach, the listening, the storytelling, meeting people where they are. And there are longstanding issues in communities of color. And so going back to how can EQB Med bridge the gap, what role can community-based organizations play in changing this narrative? And that's for all of you.
I just spoke, so I was waiting.
There's a Carmel.
Yeah, I can speak on that a bit. I think Dr. Reverend Cross also mentioned it a bit. Initiative. I think taking initiative is a huge factor and needs to be played and taken when it comes to things like this. For example, we actually had a site reach out to us personally. They saw EQB Med, they read the grant from Pharma, and they thought, wow, this would be a great fit. We have issues with diversity at our site. We have concerns. We want to be able to get that, push. And I thought that them reaching out to us was such a great way for us to better see and interview them and learn more about them. And just those type of things, taking the initiative really does go far and beyond. We can only do so much as long as they're willing to as well, meet us they said meet us partway as well. So I think that really does help a lot, taking initiative, just be one of the factors that really helps.
You know, it's a great point. Right now, our community is excited about the election, and churches are excited about at least one of the candidates, and and so that same kind of enthusiasm, I believe, needs to be a part of our health, because I mentioned earlier, I spent 30-some years as a hospital chaplain, so I've seen a lot, interacted a lot. So it does. It is important to have some kind of energy and behind that in the various things that we do. As Reverend Perry mentions, our churches, and then also the groups. I'm a part of a lot of associations and groups that meet, and we're dealing with a lot of issues, gentrification, how our church is going to survive in the communities that are changing. So our health needs to be right on. I think right on the table along with that, because our community has a lot of things going on, but if we're not healthy and if we're not surviving, if we're not there, it doesn't matter how hard we work to save our churches, because we are our churches, our congregants and our people are. So, so what EQB Med is doing again is very important. Very important. We have to save lives, I believe.
Can I just say this? You know, we at Yale, when we started in 2009, recruitment for African Americans, minorities, and Hispanic was at 3%. We went from 3% in the 10 years, from 3 to 20 to 40, 60, and 80 in some studies. And that's good, because that's evidence-based. But the evidence now is that that was then and this is now. And we're dealing with a whole new generation of folk who've already made it through the wilderness and are entering another wilderness. And so we've got to find new ways of reaching them. It seems like social media is where we can find many of them, because that's where many of them hang out. But at the same time, this webinar and reaching people through different forms of media and other, we have to be really innovative. And let me give you an example. During COVID, the folk who were really marginalized were senior citizens. When their loved ones would go to the hospital with COVID, their loved ones couldn't get in to see them. And some of them died, before they even got a chance to say goodbye. And a lot of them died in nursing homes. And then, the other thing about seniors, they weren't tech savvy. So they couldn't go do Zoom. Hell, it took me a long time to learn how to do Zoom. And so what we did at Yale was we did a pilot program where we took 15, 20 seniors, gave them Chromebooks, and we helped them to get on Zoom, to be able to do telemedicine, to be able to have a email account and Facebook account. And it's amazing when you can see an 89, 84, 90-year-old individuals on Zoom at your church, or able to contact their health provider, or email their friends and families when they can't get to the anniversary or the birthday party or the Christmas party. So that's the kind of innovation I'm hoping that we'll find in EQB Med, that we'll have to understand. We have to get to where people are, listen to their story, hear their story. Don't assume that we know the answers before we get there. But once we can analyze this, work with them to bring about change. And I think that's where the road meets the rubber. The rubber meets the road.
Indeed. I want to jump to a note in some of our comments, thinking about going back and some of the things you've referred to, advocacy, and how that we have to advocate for our own health, but in so many underrepresented communities that Black and Brown people just don't advocate for themselves. And so what would you recommend, advice, to help encourage that and stimulate more of self-advocacy? Reverend Dr. Cross.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Did you say Cross? Oh,
I'll go back to Dr.
What would I
Perry.
recommend for self-advocacy? Advocacy. Remember, I said at the beginning how I talked with a friend who had gone through some things. Being in that's one way to start. To talk with trusted messengers, if you might, and then they can talk to other folk. And groups talk among themselves. There are folk who in my graduating class from college, and we have a group and we texting all the time to each other and all like that. So it's a matter of I think letting folk know what's going on and with my life, your life, whatever, and throwing things out there like what I mentioned earlier. My friend whose brother sweep leaves and take care of his health. It's been a long day. I hope I answered your question. Did I comment right? I may have gotten off base.
You did.
But we have different groups, and just take advantage of it, as I say, when we get together.
Thank you. All right. And
Okay.
then, Carmel, so you work closely with Morehouse, who is a hub mentor for community-based sites for the EQB Med initiative. What are some of the lessons learned from working with community-based sites within the program, and how can they be replicated in other regions or institutions? Oh, looks like she might be breaking up again. So we can always.
Okay, I think I'm back. I think
Oh,
I.
absolutely. Did you need me to ask the question again?
Never mind. I'm back.
Perfect. You're good. Okay, so I will just.
Could you do me the biggest favor and repeat that question for me?
Absolutely, no worries. So you work closely with Morehouse School of Medicine, and they are a hub mentor for community-based sites in the EQB Med initiative. What are some lessons learned from working with community-based sites in the program? How can they be replicated in other regions and institutions?
Okay. So in regards to that, yeah, working with other sites, we're currently working with Morehouse School of Medicine's. Our mentee would essentially be Grady at the moment. Working with Grady, it's been a big part of it has been just taking your time. I realize we have to meet with a lot of leadership in Grady, making sure that they are okay with everything. They don't want to feel as if we are taking over. They want to make sure that everyone's able to collaborate, speak freely, and we both reach the goal that we need. I've noticed that change can't happen overnight. We're all about just trying to sit down, see what needs to be done, what their numbers look like. We do have site profiles that we create. So looking at the numbers, seeing where they're at and where they want to be at in the future, and just essentially setting up goals and KPIs and looking at the feasibility of it all and seeing that, hey, this can happen as long as this happens. And what do you need from us to make it possible? And I really think we can really use that in other sites. It's one of those things where every site is different. Some people need more resources, technology based, while others need more human resources, like more workers. So it's all about kind of finding the special niche between everyone, but still being able to meet that goal overall. Because the goal is the same, it's just who we're working with is going to be different. So I think that can use that to kind of go from one side to another.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And this next question is for everyone. And I'd love to jump back to Reverend Dr. Perry to get us started. What do you think are the most pressing needs for making clinical trials more equitable? And how can the healthcare system evolve to meet these challenges?
Okay, let me see if I can segue into this question somehow. The previous question is somehow connected to all of this, and I think that, like we talked about the elephant in the room, and I don't want people to think that because people are marginalized that they're so impoverished that they can't get out of the boat. But you have to look at who put them in the boat in the first place. I think the way to get out of this boat is what our parents have taught us and what the Black church has always taught us, that education. We didn't learn to read in public school. We learned to read the Bible. Our ancestors learned to read the Bible because they weren't allowed to read or to go to school. But that's so we take in charge of our health and of our future. So education and opportunity. And I'm hoping that EQB Med will put this in the mix for our consideration, that education is so important. How do we get the message out? How do we let people know that, you know, there are IRBs and that there are laws in process now to protect their rights. They have a right to get out of a trial study. They have a right to say no at any time they want to. These are the kind of things our people need to know. And then that there are opportunities. It's not just for the rich. There's a Tulsa study for prostate cancer where you go in on Monday and you can come out Monday night. It's a $30,000 study that they're doing, but our folk don't even know that the study is out there. So how do we get that opportunity? There's stem cell for sickle cell now. How do we get this word out, this information out to our communities? And the other thing is, you know, it's good to have this EQB Med thing going and pharma, but the question I'm asking is, how do we sustain this? How will, you know, you can come in today and do something and tomorrow go out and we're back to where we started. We've got to put in place some forms of support system going forward as part of the work that we're doing. One of the other things I would just want to mention is medicine has to start looking like minority people. When I go to see, when I was in New York, I had a doctor from Howard. His daughter's a doctor now, Dr. Desir up at Yale. And this doctor, when I would go in, he'd take 15, 20 minutes with me. I have a white doctor now in the good old town of Branford. I go in, I see him. If I get 7 minutes, that's all he got to give. And so I'm saying, so one of the things that we started doing is we started an exposure program. And I know that Meharry has a similar kind of program. So we're dealing with high school and college students, and we do 4 weeks in the summer, a 4x4, where we get them to meet Black doctors and minority doctors and just doctors and medical people in the field. And we try to inspire them to say, yes, you can. How are you going to change medicine? You got to change the face of medicine. It's an ugly face now. It's a face that frightens us because it doesn't look like us and it doesn't have our interests. One of the things the EQB Med might do, and that's what I'm saying, it's a lot of work for us to do. All hands on board, and each of us brings something to it. And that's why I like to have a think tank, thoughtful. I don't want folk who can't think. I want people who are willing to think and who can think, sitting at the table from all our representative bodies, all of our leaders, all of our community, collaborating with other thinkers and researchers, trying to come up with best solutions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Carmel, what your thoughts on making clinical trials more equitable? How can we evolve to meet these challenges?
Yeah, I think just putting it on the table, just making it accessible to others. People, like they mentioned, aren't even aware about what's happening. A lot of trials are going unnoticed. The advocacy of it all, being able to see people, I guess, have opportunity to have explained to them. Doctors essentially will, a lot of times, will present their studies, their own trials, whatever they're working out personally. So it's not really a lot of room. If it doesn't apply to them, they may not speak up on it. And I think a lot of it is just, providing platforms for those to see that, hey, this study is going on. Maybe because I have this disease or this illness, maybe it'll apply to me. Just being able to create and provide resources, just areas where people can find more information is really important in regards to clinical trials, and it makes them more equitable that way, just because you don't know what's out there unless you look for it, but we can't have them look for it if we don't provide those resources as well. So a big part of it is just making sure that each site is doing what they can to inform about their trials, not just if the doctor himself is having that trial, but just overall. Like, if you are looking for a lupus trial, there's many different resources to look for. If you're looking for a COVID trial, what's out there. So just having the site, be informed, communicate as much as possible, and just go out there and provide that information so people can reach out and they can learn more and be part of the studies overall. It helps a lot.
Thank you for that perspective. And then Reverend Dr. Cross, here we what can we do? Make clinical trials more equitable.
I
And
think it's,
Mhm.
and what, I'm sorry. And
Oh
what
no,
was
you're
that?
fine. No worries. And how can the healthcare system evolve to meet the challenge?
I think it's a two-way street. It's very important for, I think, clinicians to, I think, raise the question and to offer it. And again, I said earlier that I asked how many Black folk are in the trial that I'm in. And what you probably don't know about me is that I'm kind of aggressive on certain stuff like this. I ask questions and all like this, and I'm saying, what else do you have out there? And then, I do a lot of reading. There's stuff going on in Europe and other countries, I can afford to go somewhere else if necessary to try to get my hands on something. And and then some of the stuff that doctors over my time said what you're getting, you really can't afford. Because I was saying, doctor, I can afford to get, you really can't afford this. You can't. I said, well, I can afford it. I said, no, you really can't. It's so expensive, the meds and all that you're getting. So it's two-way street, two-way street. The clinicians have to, and then sometimes I wonder, why did they offer it to me? Maybe it was because I asked. Maybe it was because they saw a curiosity in me. Maybe Reverend Perry, maybe God just put it on their spirits to say, well, I'm going to put him in this trial because I didn't have to be in that trial. However, I'm probably a little different in the sense that I do raise a lot of questions, Doctor. I do, I do push the envelope a little bit. Look, come on, what's going on? But I think it's a two-way street. The clinicians need to want and need to reach out to get folk involved, and folk really have to ask the question. I ask folk who are going through certain diseases now, have you asked the doctors, is there a clinical trial out there? And 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 I think folk are beginning to do that. Some folk in my circle are beginning to do that. So we need to do that in our circles. But I'm thinking also about a young lady who was, and I saw her Friday, who's at one of the churches I pastored, and I love to tell her story. I don't know if you've heard of Ricky Farrelly. You've heard of Ricky.
I think so, yes.
Okay, I saw Ricky Friday. She's in California right now, but Ricky started something called the the Black Breast Council, piece and all like that, and she is doing a lot, I think, to get Black folk to be involved in clinical trials, because when you know her story of how with triple negative breast cancer she would have been dead had she not been in a clinical trial. And her mother told me Friday, she says, it's been, because I saw Ricky's mother said today, 13 years since she was diagnosed with cancer. And so you look at stories like Ricky, and we need more stories like that. And I'm sure that there are people who do participate in um, in groups like um, prostate cancer groups and all like that. And we do talk among ourselves. A lot of us, when you've gone through that, people do call and talk. What medicine are you on, and who's doing this? I mentioned that I called someone when I was talking about trying to figure out if I should go through this trial or not. So I think we need to talk among ourselves. We need to talk also among our clinicians. And I think clinicians, if they're honest with themselves, will also open this thing up and let other folk into it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Cross. And before we go into final thoughts, there was a comment for Reverend Dr. Perry about think tanks. Could you elaborate a little bit more on convening think tanks and what that would look like, and just a little bit more on your thoughts around those?
Yes, I think that when I mention think tanks, I'm thinking that we need the people on both sides of the aisle to come together. We need to have people who are critical thinkers at the table from our community, as well. And not to say that our community leaders are not, because most of them are, but we need thinking people at the table to, because not one of us, not any one of us knows the answer, but together we can arrive at some answers and we can work through some answers. And so we need everybody there. And you know, I was at a conference today, and I talked to a state representative whose husband at 58 died of a heart attack. And she said someone had mentioned to her that that was a widow's disease, that he had no symptoms, he had an EKG, everything was fine. And so she was trying to present her case to the House and trying to get. She said it's through a simple. If the state would just pay for a simple exam, it could have saved his life. So when I say bringing thought thinking people to the table, we need to bring everybody who can contribute to this, and who can help us raise awareness, but also help us work through some of the cloudy darkness that's in front of us to arrive at some clear projectives for the future, and then finding ways to implement those. Because when we work in silos, when one group, one church, one building, one doctor, one school, it doesn't work. And that's why I like EQB Med, because it's bringing all of us together in a collaborative effort to challenge us to bring the best to the table that we can, and to see if we can come up with some solutions. So I'm really happy to be a part of the EQB Med project.
Thank you. Thank you for that elaboration. And so we'll move into final thoughts now, just whether it's about EQB Med or participants in clinical trials. Any final thoughts or messages that you'd like to share with our audience this evening? I'll go to Carmel first.
Yeah, I think a clinical trial is nothing without the patients. I think it's for the patients. We're not going to learn information. We're not going to get research, anything about the patients. And their input is what's most important. How they're feeling is most important. If they withdraw, there's a reason for that. If they want to stay, there's a reason for that. So it's all about making them feel comfortable and making sure that what's being done with the studies is done correctly. Diversity plays a large part in that. We can't only have one race being the predominant that's being represented in the clinical studies, because we don't know how it affects other races. We have to make sure that we're taking the initiative to include everyone, but it can't be done unless everyone is comfortable and everyone wants to be included and feels comfortable to be included. So I think that's projects like EQB Med really push that, and they want to make sure we're including everyone. We're increasing this diversity. We're allowing others to be involved, because without it, we're not going to be able to get this research. We're not going to be able to learn more. We're not going to make innovative solutions. So I am really happy to be part of this study about the project overall, because it just makes me feel like change is being made. It may be a little bit slow at times, and maybe not as quickly as I hope it could be in some arenas. But I do think it's important that's continuously being affected.
Thank you. Thank you. Reverend Dr. Cross, any final messages or thoughts for our audience this evening?
Usually, I think I mentioned in South Carolina, I don't know if I said tonight or not, that a clinical trial saved my life. I mentioned that I was in the gym this morning, a couple of gym, shooting ball and all like that. So it's still good to be here. It's still good to hold my grandbaby and all like that. So we just need to talk and work on this, and what you guys are doing. But if you be mad, it's so very, very important. It's I won't say it's the first step, but it's definitely a step or some steps along the way. And we just need to keep doing it to get the word out there, and go through any hesitancy on the part of our people, and also to try to nudge those who have clinical trials to let folk participate in those, I know, for instance, I live in Washington, D.C. I don't know how many clinical trials Howard University has, but I know that they're working on some too, and all like that. It's good for institutions that serve our people also to be involved, and it's good for folk to be involved. And continue to do what you're doing. Thank you. Thanks for letting me be a part of this.
Thank you. And Reverend Dr. Perry.
Yes, let me say that, I'm a part of this culture. I grew up in this country. I grew up in poverty. I ever lived in one of those zip codes. I got the measles shot, the mump shot, chicken pox, and I just recently got my flu shot, pneumonia shot. But grandma also had a bag of medicine. And in her bag, she had what we call faith and hope and love
Amen.
and peace. And that's where I get my power. And I think when we put those two medical bags together, wham, bam, I think we got a winner.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, Cobb Institute is a proud partner with EQB Med as well. And just thank you to blackdoctor.org, the platform that we're doing this webinar on tonight. And just thank you all. We're very grateful to have had this experience and this exposure and your participation. So everyone have a great evening.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Thank you.
bye, y'all. Bye-bye. Good seeing y'all.
Thank you.